This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. But mishap drowns in Congo River.
Palestinian
Rains 100 shells on Kherson, killing 6.
White House says North Korea delivered munitions to Russia.
Son of Steve Irwin successfully breeds tattoo named after father. Staying with us on international news today, here is a bulletin in full. At least 30 people have drowned and 167. 30 people have drowned and 167 missing after a boat capsized on the Congo River in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Didier Mbula, Provincial Health Minister for Equatorial Province in the country's northwest, said 189 people have been rescued and that the search is ongoing following the tragedy late on Friday. Mr. Mbula said the locally made boat was overloaded, carrying more than 300 people when it capsized at night near the city of Mbandaka. Volunteers have joined rescuers in the search for survivors and for bodies, while families have been mourning loved ones who were among the victims. Officials added, "We think that the toll could climb," Mr. Mbula warned. Deadly boat accidents occur regularly in Congolese waters, where vessels are frequently loaded well beyond their capacity. The Democratic Republic of Congo has few tarred roads across its vast...
Hamas do not represent the Palestinian people. News agency WAFA said Mr. Abbas also held a phone call with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, where he called the Palestinian Liberation Organization the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Hamas actions do not represent Palestinians, he said. Hamas claims a quarter of Gaza's population is homeless
after being displaced from their homes by Israeli bombardments. In its daily update, the Palestinian militant organization also claimed 357 citizens have died in the past 24 hours, with more than 1,000 injured. It said tools and equipment. It also urged a swift delivery of relief and humanitarian aid. News agencies have not been able to independently verify the figures Hamas reported.
While House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan tells press that Israeli officials have informed him that water pipes in southern Gaza have been turned back on. Sullivan says Israeli officials informed him of the development in the last hour. The Israeli military declared a complete siege of Gaza 6 days ago, with food and water turning out across the territory.
A doctor in southern Gaza said are refusing to evacuate because they have a duty to their patients. Nothing has happened. I do hope there is nothing, because we will not evacuate the hospital, he insists. We have many people in the hospital. 60 out of our patients are children. Before the line cuts out. The Israeli military has so far not responded to a request for comment on the claim that it has ordered the hospital to evacuate.
There is practically no other option for Israel at this stage than the one Benjamin Netanyahu's government is pursuing in Gaza. A former Israeli prime minister has said, speaking to journalists. Ehud Barak went on to say that the purpose of such a strategy was to ensure that Hamas military capabilities were erased and that governance of the Gaza Strip was handed to the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority. He also insisted that Israel is fully committed to international law, but must rid Israel's border from the control of Hamas, which he called an Al-Qaeda Daesh type of operation.
It's believed around 150 people were snatched by Hamas militants during its raids on towns and villages near the Gaza border. The number of hostages has not been independently verified. During the meeting today, Mr. Netanyahu hugged and shook hands with relatives who showed him pictures of their missing loved ones.
Iran has warned that an Israeli ground offensive in Gaza could escalate conflicts across the Middle East. The comments came during a meeting between Iran's Foreign Minister Hussein Amri-Boudellarian and Qatar's Emir Sheikh. No one can guarantee the control of the situation and the non-expansion of the conflicts, he said, according to an Iranian Foreign Ministry statement. Amir Abdollahian said anyone who is interested in preventing the current crisis from growing must prevent the current barbaric attacks by Israel against citizens and civilians in Gaza. The Iranian official also criticized the U.S. for its support of Israel. Iran's top diplomat was in Qatar over the weekend as part of a regional tour that includes visits to Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria as well. In Qatar on Saturday, he also met Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who is based in the country.
You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Here is the rest of our stories. Pakistan security forces killed 6 militants and wounded 8 others in a shootout during an overnight raid in the country's northwest. The military said this on Sunday. Security forces conducted an intelligence-based operation in the Mir Ali area of the North Waziristan districts when they exchanged fire with militants. The military said 1 soldier also died and troops recovered weapons and ammunition from the militants' hideout. North Waziristan had several sanctuaries in Afghanistan and are regrouping in the area. The Pakistani Taliban are a separate group, but allies of the Afghan Taliban, which seized power in Afghanistan in 2021, as the US and NATO troops were in the final stages of their pullout after 20 years of war.
A new earthquake has hit western Afghanistan several days after 2 large terrors in the region killed more than 1,000 people. The U.S. Geological Survey says the magnitude 6.3 quake struck near the city of Herat. It was at a depth of 6.3 kilometers, 4 miles. At least 1 person has died according to local health authorities. Another 100 are being treated for injuries in the regional hospital, the World Health Organization said. More than 90% of those who died in the earlier quakes were women and children, the UN's children agency UNICEF said. In its report, the USGS said the epicenter of the latest terror was 30 kilometers west of Herat, Afghanistan's 3rd largest city close to the Iranian border. Last Saturday's earthquake hit Zindajan, a rural district some 40 kilometers from Herat. The terror saw entire houses which were too fragile to withstand the quake reduced to rubble. Villagers used shovels and bare hands to search for missing people. Medicine Sans Frontiers Afghanistan's program head Yahya Khalila told the press the casualties would likely be low because people were already sleeping outside in tents. In terms of psychology, people are panicked and traumatized, he said. People are not feeling safe. I will assure you 100% no one will sleep in their house. The Taliban, who has been ruling Afghanistan since 2021, also as the cold sets in, will likely not be able to manage in tents for more than a month. Afghanistan has been reeling from an economic crisis since the Taliban came to power, when aid given directly to the government was stopped. The country is frequently hit by earthquakes, especially in the Hindu Kush mountain range, as it lies near the junction of the Eurasian and Indian tectonic plates.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to meet this week with Chinese leaders in Beijing on a visit that underscores China's economic and diplomatic support for Moscow during its war in Ukraine. The two countries have forged an informal alliance against the United States and other democratic nations that's now complicated by the Israel-Hamas war. China has sought to balance its ties with Israel with its economic relations with Iran and Syria, which are strongly backed by Russia. Putin's visit is also a show of support to Chinese leader Xi Jinping's signature belt and road drive to build infrastructure and expand China's influence. The Russian leader will be among the highest profile guests at a gathering marking the 10th anniversary of Xi's announcement of the policy, which has laden countries such as Zambia and Sri Lanka with heavy debt. With heavy debts after they signed contracts with Chinese companies to build roads, airports, and other public works they could not otherwise afford. You're watching the International News on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the International News on Atlantic Television Network. Here is the rest of our stories. Azerbaijan's president has raised the national flag over the capital of the former breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan retook the territory last month in a 24-hour lightning military offensive, prompting the vast majority of its ethnic Armenian population to flee. President Ilham Aliyev was pictured raising his nation's flag over the capital, which was known as Kankendi by the Azerbaijan and as Sabankert by Armenians. He also delivered a speech in his presidential office. According to his presidential office, most of the territory's population of 120,000 ethnic Armenians have now fled to Armenia, many fearing persecution, although Azerbaijan had pledged to respect their rights. Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan claimed the large-scale evacuation amounted to a direct act of an ethnic cleansing and depriving people of their motherland, but Azerbaijan has rejected.
And a member of President Vladimir Putin's governing United Russia Party made the remarks during a meeting with residents in the Siberian city of Nizhny. So in this regard, there will certainly be some inconsistencies and unresolved issues, she said. Komarova's comments quickly spread online, reportedly prompting pro-war activists to denounce.
Opposition leader Donald Tusk declared the beginning of a new era for his country after opposition parties appeared to have won enough votes in Sunday's parliamentary election to oust the governing Nationalist Conservative Party. The party, Law and Justice, has bickered with allies and faced accusations of eroding rule of law at home in its 8 years in power. It appeared that voters were mobilized like never before, voting even in greater numbers than when the nation ousted the communist authorities in 1989. Exit poll results pegged at a record 72.9%. In some places, people were still in line when polling officials closed but all were allowed to vote. If the results predicted by the exit polls holds, Law and Justice won but also lost. It got more seats than any other party, but fewer than in the previous election, and not enough to be able to lead a government that can pass laws in the legislature. The Ipsos exit poll suggested that the Law and Justice obtained 200 seats. Its potential partner, that the far-right Confederation, got 12 seats, as a showing the party acknowledged was a defeat.
Russian attacks on Ukraine over a 24-hour period killed 6 people, local officials reported Sunday. 2 people were killed and 3 more injured in the Kherson area after more than 100 shells bombarded the region over the weekend. Local governor Oleksandr Prokudin wrote on social media 2 guided bombs later hit key infrastructure in Kherson City, sparking a partial blackout and disruption to the area's water supply, reported the head of the city's military administration, Roman Mroko. Local officials said 2 more people died in the Donetsk area, and that a 57-year-old man in the Kharkiv region. In a separate incident, a 14-year-old boy was killed by a mine in a field in Ukraine's Mykolaiv region. Interior Minister eyed on Ukraine over the weekend, with Russian forces repeatedly attempting to encircle the city of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Ilya Yevlash, spokesman.
86 served as a military chaplain during Argentina's 1976 to 1983 military dictatorship. The priest is wanted for trial in Argentina for charges including aiding and abetting the 1976 killing of 22-year-old Jose Guillermo Barron and conspiring with the military to torture several other men. The incident allegedly took place in the town of San Rafael near Mendoza. Italy's top criminal court rejected his appeal and has confirmed his extradition. Arturo Salami, who represented Argentina in the case, told the newsman. He said the decision by Italy's Court of Cassation confirms the previous ruling by a Bologna appeal court and is now definitive. Italian Justice Minister Carlo Nordio now has 45 days to issue a decree that requests the extradition of Reverend Rivaberry. The battle for truth and justice that has been conducted primarily by the families of the victims of the terrible years of Argentine dictatorship reached another important result. Mr. Salami had said, this decision affirms a universal jurisdiction on the violations of human rights.
The mayor of Venice has ordered an immediate stop to electric buses operated by La Linea after 2 crashes involving its vehicles, one of which led to the deaths of 21 people. The La Linea bus crashed into a building yesterday evening in Mestre, a borough of Venice, injuring 15 people. No one on board suffered serious injuries, according to authorities. The incident came after a bus driver and 20 tourists were killed on 3rd October when a La Linea vehicle fell from an elevated street near Venice, crashing close to railway tracks and catching fire. After the fatal crash, Italy's transport minister questioned the use of electric vehicle technology in buses like La Linea, adding that the deaths should be a cause for reflection. Venice Mayor Luigi Brugano initially said the tragedy, which he described as an apocalyptic scene, did not provoke a rethink of the city's plan to expand the fleet of electric-powered buses. But in an announcement today on X, formerly Twitter, Mr. Brunaro said, yesterday evening, a second accident occurred involving a La Linea vehicle, an electric bus, being of the same type as the one involved in the flyover accident on 3rd October. It was decided to suspend the service of all electric buses of this company to carry out an adequate investigation.
2 women who were images wore images of paragliders on their backs during yesterday's protest for Palestinians are now being sought by London police. The women who wore red and black jackets are being asked to come forward as part of an investigation into potential public order offense. The images may be a reference to Hamas storming into Israel on motorized paragliders during a surprise attack last weekend. Hundreds of Israelis were killed, including 260 people at a music festival. It comes as a woman who has been arrested in Britain on suspicion of supporting Hamas, which is designated terror organization in the UK.
A rugby player has died after suffering a cardiac arrest during the match in Cambridgeshire. Emergency services responded to calls that Arturas Rudy's 27 had collapsed during the match at Wisbech Rugby Club on Chapel Road, Wisbech, on Saturday. Responders carried out CPR and used a defibrillator, but he could not be resuscitated and died at the scene. This Rugby Football Club, Wisbech's opponent in the Eastern Counties First Division fixture, said in a post on Facebook the game had been abandoned following the incident. A statement released on Wisbech Rugby Club's website on Sunday said, "It is with great sadness that the club announces the death of Arturas Rudy's during a match played on Saturday, 14th October. Arturas, age 27, was a hugely valued and respected member of our club who began his time at Wisbech RFC in 2013. Wisbech RFC thanks everyone who helped Arturas in his immediate moments of need yesterday, including club first aiders, teammates, and this RFC. The club also wishes to thank the emergency services and first responders who attended the scene. As a club, we are in touch with Arturas' family to offer our heartfelt sympathies and support." His partner, Jolita Kiselovita, said the pair had a 2-year-old son together. A fundraising page she set up has raised €6,000.
And now we'll bring you news from the Americas. The White House said on Friday that North Korea has delivered more than 1,000 containers of military equipment and munitions to Russia for its ongoing war in Ukraine. Speculation about a possible North Korean plan to refill Russia's munition stores drained in its protracted war with Ukraine fled last month. When North Korean leader Kim Jong-un traveled to Russia to meet President Vladimir Putin and visit key military sites. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that the U.S. believes Kim is seeking sophisticated Russian weapons technologies in return for the munitions to boost North Korea's military and nuclear program. The White House released the images that it said showed the containers were loaded onto a Russian-flagged ship before being moved via train to southwestern Russia. The containers were shipped between September 7 and October 1 between Najin, North Korea, and Dunay, Russia, according to the White House.
The Pentagon has ordered a second carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean Sea and is sending Air Force fighter jets to the region as Israel prepares to expand its Gaza operations. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in a statement Saturday the U.S. warships are not intended to join the fighting in Gaza or take part in Israel's operations, but the presence of two of the Navy's most powerful vessels designed to send a message message of deterrence to Iran and Iranian proxies in the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. The movements are part of our efforts to deter hostile actions against Israel or any efforts toward widening this war following Hamas attacks on Israel, Austin said in the statement. The first carrier strike group led by the USS Gerald R. Ford arrived off the coast of Israel last week. Now the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower strike group, which deployed from Norfolk, Virginia, on Friday, is headed to the eastern Mediterranean. The aircraft carrier was initially set to sail for the waters of U.S. European Command. it is unclear how long the Ford will stay in the region once the Eisenhower carrier strike group arrives, on U.S. defense official told press. The Eisenhower, which is in the flagship of the carrier strike group, will be joined by a guided missile cruiser and 2 guided missile destroyers. Austin's statement said the Eisenhower can carry more than 60 aircraft, including FA-18 fighter jets. The Ford can deploy more than 75 aircraft.
Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis said the United States should not take in any Palestinian refugees if they flee the Gaza Strip because they are all anti-Semitic, and he dismissed international entities for Israel to provide clean running water and utilities to the 2.3 million civilians in the territory. DeSantis' comments were a striking departure from the public stand taken by U.S. officials, including some of his fellow Republicans who draw distinctions between the aims of the Palestinian people and those of Hamas. The militant group has ruled Gaza since 2007 and launched an attack against Israel last weekend. DeSantis' endorsement of such tactics comes as he has advocated hard-line policies as a White House candidate. He suggested that not providing water or other services would persuade Hamas to release the hostages it has taken during its incursion. You have Israelis being held hostage, as well as Americans being held hostage. But I don't think they are under obligation to be providing water and these utilities while those hostages are being held. Hamas should return those hostages before any discussions are had, according to DeSantis.
U.S. actress Piper Laurie, best known for her roles in The Hustler and Carrie films, has died aged 91, her manager has said. Marion Rosenberg told the Associated Press that the three-time Oscar nominee passed away in her Los Angeles home. She described the actress as a superb talent and a wonderful human being. Her talents were not limited to acting. Laurie took a 15-year break from acting to campaign for the civil rights movement. She was nominated for an Oscar for the first movie she starred in upon her return, Carrie. Born as Rosetta Jacobs, she was born in Detroit, Michigan, to parents of Russian and Polish heritage. She was signed by Universal Studios at the age of 17, earning a contract and a new name, Piper Laurie. However, Laurie became frustrated with the acting industry and being cast in the same roles and broke her Hollywood contract, moving to New York to pursue all the roles. She later stepped away from the profession on what became a 15-year break and focused her attention on the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. During that time, she also married film critic Joe Morgenstern and had a daughter. Laurie also starred in numerous TV shows, including Malloch, Mother, She Wrote, and played Judge Clooney's character's mother on ER.
Ecuadorians are voting in line in the runoff of the presidential election that has been overshadowed by a crime wave which has turned the country into one of the most violent in the region. The first round of the election was held just days earlier after presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio was shot dead in the capital Quito. 7 suspects were arrested in connection with his assassination but have since been killed in jail. Security is voters' main concern. Voters will choose between centrists Daniel Noboa of the National Democratic Action Coalition and Luisa Gonzalez of the left-wing Citizen Revolution Movement. The 35-year-old Daniel Noboa is the son of banana magnate Alvaro Noboa. The older Noboa ran for the presidency 5 times but failed to get elected. Daniel Noboa's success in the first round, he came second with 23% of the votes, thereby securing himself a spot in the runoff, was a surprise. He has since overtaken the first-place candidate, Luisa Gonzalez, in the opening polls. Luisa Gonzalez, a lawyer who secured 34% of the votes in the first round, may not have a billionaire father, but she does enjoy the backing of former President Rafael Correa. Mr. Correa continues to exert huge political influence in Ecuador, despite the fact that he has lived in Belgium since he left power in 2017 after a 10-year stint as president. The former leader is a divisive figure who was convicted of breaking campaign finance laws in 2020 and sentenced in absentia to 10 years in prison. The 45-year-old Luisa Gonzalez is his handpicked candidate, and she said that if she were to win, Mr. Correa would be her main advisor. But Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Noboa have tried to address voters' concerns about Ecuador's skyrocketing murder rate and the increasing power of gangs. And also news from Australia. Robert Irwin, son of the late conservationist Steve Irwin, has celebrated breeding a rare turtle named after his father. Steve, also known as the Crocodile Hunter, was an Australian zookeeper and media personality known for his nature-based TV shows and his catchphrase, creaky, during his close encounters. He died in 2006 after he was stabbed 100 times by a stingray in just seconds. His children, Robert, 19, and Bindi, 25, have continued his animal-loving legacy. Robert shared the footage on social media of the very first Sia Irwin's turtle hatched at as a zoological facility anywhere in the world. And that's the international news for today. But before we go, here is another look at the major stories.